I would challenge leaders to stop equating activity with more progress. In this moment where there is so much noise and so much coming at them, simplification is a competitive advantage. And focus creates speed. Clarity reduces burnout. Organizations that are creating momentum right now are not necessarily doing more. They're getting clarity and focus on what they do really, really well.
Jen, you've spent a lot of time in conversations with retail executives across different brands and organizations. That gives you a rare look into what leaders are really thinking about. So tell me, what leaders are saying publicly versus privately discussing?
Well, I love the powerful question. I think, publicly, it is obviously a huge acceleration in an adoption in technology. And so I do think that, retailers are super excited for what's to come and what's going to transform their business. What I will say is behind the scenes, what's keeping them up right now? I mean, where do we even start? I think leaders are navigating pressure from every direction simultaneously, to be honest. Obviously there's AI adoption and acceleration. There's scaling with limited people and resources, which you hear over and over. I think retailers are obviously, managing rising costs while protecting margins, which, never seems to go away. A lot of the enterprise retailers are challenged with, legacy systems that are slowing their growth. And, while they're investing in new systems without overbuilding and overwhelming their teams, right? So I think there's a lot of that. I mean, you have, I know you're familiar with inventory visibility and warehouse efficiency, and they need help creating efficiency behind the scenes. So, I think retail's biggest problems are not idea problems. They all have ideas that, their teams are coming to the table. It's prioritization, alignment, focus. That's what I would say.
Makes sense. And Jen, with that, tell me this, how are you seeing the org structures evolve, right? With competing priorities, with pressures from all possible directions. I'm sure privately there are a lot of conversations on how their own or current organizational structure is becoming an impediment and how they should be evolving. And especially with AI transforming so much, how are retail leadership structures and teams changing?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, particularly around accelerating AI. I mean, look, we're all in this season of building the plane while flying it. No one has a PhD in AI. So I think particularly around organization, they're layering AI initiatives, on top of already overloaded teams, right? So they want to leverage AI, but I think they're still trying to determine, behind the scenes, where does it create real value? Who has ownership over it and for what? What should actually be automated? How do you drive adoption internally? I think, particularly with AI adoption, there's a fear of moving too slowly and moving too quickly at the same time. What we hear overwhelmingly is leaders aren't looking for AI to replace people. They want AI to remove friction, which I think we all do. And I know you can relate to that. What we're seeing with the most successful retailers is that they're, moving away from AI theater, I'll call it, and towards practical application. I think that's the season that we're in. You want to look at what retailers can you learn from and glean from, whether it's, and let's talk about that. And I'm sure you have insight into, some of your clients. Walmart is improving supply chain. Sephora is enhancing personalization. a brand like Sharon Lighty at Vitamin Shop. They're building more intelligent ecosystems to have individual wellness, which is so cool to see. There's so many brands doing unique things, and I think we're all learning from each other. I'd be curious to see what you're hearing from your clients.
Absolutely. So Jen, I think one thing that you said which hit home is what can we learn from others who are sort of navigating from the same perspective. And one of the articles that I read recently about Starbucks, having inventory accuracy problems, and they basically launched an AI agent which helps the store staff with inventory, and they had to get rid of it. And also, like we of course have to learn from the positive. We also have to learn from the negatives, right? So it's so important that when you're implementing AI, it is important that the AI has the right information layer to basically empower it, right? So AI is only as good as the information you're feeding into it, right? So if you are not feeding it with the right information, and you're not structuring the data right, and if you're not giving it the right relevant information, then the data is going to get misread, and the outcomes are going to be similar to what Starbucks faced, and hence they had to get rid of it. So I absolutely agree. And I think there are brands that are nailing the inventory problem so well by leveraging IoT, by leveraging RFID, right, and camera vision, etc., which is basically helping them improve the way their stores are run, and it's creating the right data layer which can then be powered with AI to make the store operations a lot more intelligent, right? So brands like Group Dynamite, Textile OS, which has Fabletics, which has Savage X20, those retailers are either already deployed these technologies or are moving in that direction. So yes, I'm seeing a similar pattern. There are both positive outcomes and negative outcomes, and hence the technology layer underneath has to be powerful enough and clean enough for you to drive the right outcome.
Yeah, it is such a test and learn environment right now. And, to your point, I think it's, test and learn and fail fast if you're going to, go down the environment. And I think another thing that retailers are struggling with is, they want everybody in there playing in the tools and figuring this thing out, but, kind of managing that from a top line perspective and an executive standpoint is challenging, right? Because they're like, go in and play and learn and test and learn, but then come back with your findings so that we can all learn. And also it's a privacy issue, of where does the data sit, and people are like, go in and explore and come out with your case studies and your findings, but don't put that in there. We have to be really careful with the privacy and the data. So I think that piece of it is really tough too, from a large, enterprise standpoint.
Makes sense. That reminds me, there was one conversation that you and I were having earlier where you mentioned that, smaller brands can really challenge enterprise brands, right? Because the smaller brands are quick, they are nimble, they have ways of accelerating which an enterprise player will not, right? So tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good conversation. I think, you and I were chatting about the fact that small brands can win in this environment. And I don't know that, that has really, there has been more of an opportunity for these D2Cs, coming into this space. I mean, think about it just from, the size and scale of the company. They can disrupt these larger retailers because they move faster, right? They can make decisions quicker. They can test faster. They can adapt faster, and they have less bureaucracy within their environment. So the enterprise organizations are struggling with, there's a lot of layers, and, you have to get alignment and adoption within the larger teams, and that can be really challenging. So agility is becoming, one of retail's biggest competitive advantages. And I really do think that you're going to see some real D2Cs and, SMB players come into the space, into their own, because, they can really test and learn and scale fast.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I think I'm seeing a similar pattern, right? Like even from a technology adoption perspective, the kind of adoption that I'm seeing relatively smaller retailers do versus the giants who have like 2,000 plus stores, the outcome, the way they are looking at technology is so different, right?
Yeah.
So that's definitely I 100% agree with it. Um, Another thing that you just mentioned is how there is not lack of innovation, right? In fact, the problem is now that you just have too many ideas, right? And then
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a lot of CXO conversations that you're going through where the discussion is about the limited organizational agility, right? Like concerns around that. Tell us more about what you're hearing there.
Yeah, I mean, we hear that from leaders, whether it's a small company or an enterprise sized company. I think all of our leaders, we do CEO experiences within our organization, and we really talk about pain points. And a big pain point for any size company is they're trying to do too many things at once, right? Particularly in this technology growth age. I think initiative overload is becoming one of retailers' biggest growth killers, right? It's overlapping work streams and technology redundancies and kind of figuring that out within their tech stack. Small, good ideas become consuming, and they take resources and people to do that. So it's not a lack of ideas. It's a lack of focus, and where do you put your power and your energy? I would argue that a lot of these organizations know what they need to stop doing, but struggle to actually stop, right? And taking energy and resources to do so. So I would say that the problem isn't identifying priorities; it's protecting them. And even profitable ideas can become distractions if it dilutes focus, right? You've got to get the team aligned and marching all in the right direction. And, so often there's too many competing priorities.
Absolutely. I think that reminds me there are a lot of organizational challenges when it comes to bigger organizations. And the way they solved for it in the past 5 years is that they've broken the operations or store technology umbrella into two parts, right? So there is, of course, the scaled ops umbrella, right, which is headed by somebody like the SVP or VP of operations, etc. And then there is this technology innovation umbrella, right? That's how the retailers had started to split it. And then there was a handshake of the innovation or the what you call emerging technology or retail technology, retail innovation technology groups. They would come up with ideas, they would launch them in a few stores, test them out, get outcomes, measure them, and then there would be a handshake to transition that technology for full scale deployment, right? Are you seeing something similar happen yet? And if yes, how is it evolving? If not, then what are you seeing instead?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good point. I think the disconnect is rarely just technology, right? It's alignment, like we were just talking about. I think when priorities aren't clear and teams aren't aligned, ownership gets fragmented within, no matter what initiative you're trying to launch within your own walls. If the adoption isn't supported, it's not going to work, right? Yeah. So I think, retailers often underestimate the human side of transformation. I mean, when you're implementing, a transformation internally, it's difficult, right? It's difficult. You're putting leaders in a position where maybe they, are learning new skill sets or leading new teams. We're seeing that all over the places. With realignment comes confusion. And so I think technology doesn't solve organizational confusion. It amplifies it oftentimes. And it's, having those strong leaders that can have, again, a clear focus and a clear direction and get everybody marching in the same direction when you have those initiatives is important.
What you just mentioned, Jen, is interesting, especially because there is also a lack of the right executive communities, right? It matters, like the executive communities now matter way more than they ever did, right, in the last 5 to 10 years, because there's information overload. There is agility and speed that is expected, and yet there is perfection that is expected on the other side. How are you seeing some of these executive communities evolve in the last 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, community to us, I think matters more now than ever. And I know we've had this, conversation. I think, look, no matter where you are in your career, whether you're climbing the ladder, you need mentorship and sponsorship, inside your organization, outside your organization. If you're in a C-suite position, I think people often think you walk through this door of C-suite, Bill, and you're supposed to have all the answers. And that's just not the case, particularly in this, growth age of technology. So I think it speaks volumes that, people say it's lonely at the top. It is, and so you do have to surround yourself with your peers to learn and grow. I mean, these leaders are making high pressure decisions with, not all of, the plane hasn't been built yet. So I think you have a community and surround yourself with people in like-minded growth phases is really important, no matter what size and scale company you are, and no matter where you are, again, within your career. It's, we're always working in our bubble, right? We're head down, focused on the task and, growing and scaling. And you have to pick your head up and see what's going around so you can tap, people within your community and network to learn and grow together. I mean, that's what it's all about in this time frame, in my opinion. I mean, is that do you find that at the helm?
Yeah, 100%. I think I was honestly very fascinated by the women in retail community when I was my first time at the event.
Yeah.
And I think it was very fascinating to see so many women come together and support each other. And sometimes it's about business. Sometimes it's more than business, right? Sometimes your well-being becomes way more important for you to really do the right thing from a growth and work perspective, right? And the right balance between having the community which helps you not just navigate through work and business, but also makes you feel seen and heard, and we go through that shit together. Don't worry about it. You're not the only one. Sometimes you just need to hear that, or sometimes you just need to hear, yes, it is lonely at top. Like, are you kidding me? Like, of course it's lonely at top. And you go through those emotions and you go through that together. And I just was very fascinated by that, right? And I think especially for women, it tends to become a little bit more different because organizations do not have leadership representation at the from the women community, and sometimes it almost makes you feel that maybe I don't have a voice here when you're in a room with 5 other men leaders, right? And sometimes all you need is, I have a voice here. I can speak up because there is a community that is backing me up, right? Or I have a perspective from others who are going through the same challenge.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, it's so true. I think, leaders need a trusted space where they can drop their guard, right? And just be honest about the complexities that they're dealing with. I mean, there's still so often, women are the only female at the table, right? Whether it's on, the board discussion or, in the room itself. And sometimes, like you said, the greatest value is just hearing someone say, oh my gosh, we're struggling with that too. And it just kind of level sets the room and allows you to really dive deep and take a closer look under the hood at the complexity of the problems.
Yep. So Jen, with that, like, what are you seeing? How are you seeing the women leadership roles evolve in the last 10 to 15 years, right? Of course, there is still the percentage of women leadership is still slim, but retail is an industry where you still have a lot more women on table, right? So what are you seeing and how has it evolved in the last 10 years?
Yeah, good question. I mean, in 25, 26, women are leading 55 of, the Fortune 500 companies. It's about 11%, up from 10% in 2024. So obviously we still have a ways to go. I mean, yes, there's been, progress. We're seeing, more women invited to boards. I think women now hold, I think it's 1/3 of S&P 500 board seats, about 34%, which is dramatically higher than, a decade ago. So there's more board representation at the top, which is great, but there's still so much progress to be made. I think where we really have, a gap is in the middle. When women are, trying to support families and, go down that path. I think flexibility of companies is key because we're seeing, still so many women exit the workforce because it's just an impossible task to do it all. And so I think companies, being more flexible and supportive of women kind of in the middle of their career is where we're having a lot of fall off. And so we've made progress, but there's still so much more, room for growth. I think, and the funny thing is research after research shows that diversity of thinking, diversity on your teams, diversity within boards, it drops right to the bottom line. I mean, it's proven, and so when women are at the top, it often changes the ecosystem beneath them. So, that is where our goal comes in of, championing women and supporting them in their career goals.
Yeah. Yeah. What is, according to you, the biggest differentiation that women are bringing to the table, especially in leadership rooms and maybe also in the retail industry?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about this at Summit. I think, women bring a unique lens and viewpoint into any leadership role. I think one of our biggest superpowers that we talked about is, your gut and, just making decisions. Not every decision can be made with, spreadsheets behind it sometimes. And I think women have a real innate ability to just trust their gut with the business and, make a decision fast and learn from it. I think women are have an innate ability to be vulnerable leaders, which I think, allows for collaborative leadership and, cross-functional alignment. Because when you come to the table and say, guys, I just don't have all the answers. I just don't know in this moment, but we'll figure it out together. I think, women can do that, just innately. They allow themselves to be a little more vulnerable. And I think, that translates into an empathy-driven customer understanding, right? Like women bring such a strong intuition, and that relates to customer behavior and relationship building, right? Empathy is becoming a strategic advantage when once upon a time it was thought of as a soft skill. I think for long-term relationship building, and you're going to see that on customer loyalty on the other side. Today customer loyalty is emotional before it's transactional. And so I think women can bring that to the table very easily.
Yeah, I remember I was taking one of, the interviews for a leadership role here at Grey Orange, and that person, I was like, okay, what are you looking for, right? Like what? Because that candidate was really good, and I was sort of trying to understand what will make that candidate join us. And
yeah.
I asked that question of, why would you and why would you not work for the company, right? And what is it that you're looking for as the next chapter? He said, it'll sound funny, but I've worked in the last 20 years across multiple different leaders, right? And I want to report to a female leader.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yes, I was like, what? I'm hearing that for the first time.
Right.
It almost made me realize that, and I asked him, of course, I was curious and I nudged him a lot. I was like, why that perspective? And he said, I personally feel the business sense anybody can bring on the table. But how empathetically can you drive business and how well can you layer it for the end consumer is something that comes so naturally to women, right? They're not constantly looking at data. They're also gauging human emotions. They're constantly looking at how the team is navigating through it. And, the prioritization across various, hard calls. Sometimes his perspective was in my last 10 years of leadership roles. And there are a lot of times where, men would go through data and they would get perspective from multiple people, etc. But women will naturally know, this is what we will do and this is not what we will do, right? So he's like, I really want to work for a women leader. This is very, very interesting. Have you come across something like that?
That's such an interesting perspective. It's so evolved. And to your earlier point, I think what came out of COVID, right, is culture has become a business performance issue, not just an HR issue, right? People want to be within organizations where they feel aligned and championed, particularly the Gen Z coming into the workforce and, folks like that. They want, cultural alignment. They want to work for leaders that they trust and respect. I mean, at the end of the day, who doesn't?
100%. Is there a particular advice, Jen, that you find yourself giving very, very frequently to emerging women leaders?
Oh gosh, so many, so much advice. I think, what I hear time and time again is that particularly at the top, right, when you get into your higher level leaders, that they're so busy focused on the business. Again, you get into your bubble working and you're not using your network the way that you should because you're so busy in the day to day and, in growth mode. And I think you really do have to build relationships before you need them. So I think, when women are looking to make a pivot in their own career, they often realize that they haven't built their network along the way, right? They're so busy focused on the job and, within their own bubble and making strides within their own organization, they realize they haven't picked their head up and, built their personal relationships outside of their company, which is so important. And, we see it time and time again from leaders that, they're making a career transition and they're going, oh my gosh, I didn't focus on my own network, right? We've heard it a gazillion times. Your network is your net worth. And it's very true. No matter what stage you are in your career, whether you're, climbing the corporate ladder, you obviously, need to build your network inside your organization, outside your organization. If you're at a C-suite position, you still need that network to, figure out how to solve problems within your own organization. Let alone make a career pivot. So I think building the relationships before you actually need them is key and is why we exist. And the other piece of advice that I'll always, give women is don't wait until you feel 100% ready, right? To make that next step. Women often want to check every box. If they're applying for a role, they're like, oh, I'm just not qualified. I mean, it's just not the case, right? Men do it without even a thought. They might check one of the boxes and still apply. Don't wait until you feel 100% ready, is what I would say. Take the plunge. And the other thing that I will advise women is learn the operational side of the business. The finances matter so much. There's so many women coming up that have, that don't have visibility into the P&L. Ask for visibility. Ask to have that so you can build your resume. That is a huge piece of the puzzle, is financial acumen. So, stay adaptable. Your network becomes one of your greatest career assets. And that's what I'll say.
Yeah. No, I think amazing advice there, Jen. But tell me a little bit more about the relationship aspect. What I've personally faced, right, is um, as you grow up the ladder, of course, your family is growing. You're getting married. You're having kids. You're having aging parents. All of that is happening in parallel, right? And um, a lot of times you just don't even have the mind space to build relationships, right?
Yeah.
You want to. You have the right intent. But sometimes, the clock hits 5 and you really want to run home to your kids.
Yeah.
Or more sometimes, you see men coming in 30 minutes early to network, to talk before a big meeting. But, women are just making it on time because, they're making sure that their family is taken care of. And I've
Yeah.
gone through that cycle. I'm sure you have too, right? So,
Yeah.
it gets much harder for women to really navigate through that. Like, how would you advise someone who's struggling with that, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are this is also, what we say is there are seasons of life that, are for your career, and there are seasons of life that are for your family and, whatever's going on personally, and that's going to be, throughout your whole career. There's always going to be competing priorities for your time and energy. I think you still have to invest in looking outside of your own walls, and even if it's just carving out, maybe it's a 30-minute monthly call with a leader that, either you find, super interesting. Maybe they have opposite skills than you. Maybe you're just looking, for a particular question, of how how they have grown their company or how they've grown their career or whatever. I mean, women will rarely say no to, a 20-minute coffee and conversation. Women are really want to help emerging leaders move forward. And I think it's our responsibility, quite frankly, to do it. So ask for the coffee, ask for 20 minutes. And if all they can say is no, not right now, but, hit me up next quarter and, do it that way. But I think, it's also our responsibility to do that outreach and, again, build the relationships before you need them. It is so important, for women to do it. And I know it is a juggling act. Believe me, I have 3 kids, and I get it. There's always going to be competing priorities, but I think you have to consider it part of your job to, for your own growth and your mental health. I mean, gosh, we hear this all the time is, even coming from Summit, I didn't know how much I needed it. I didn't know how much I needed to surround myself with the right people and, just, positive energy and female alignment. It's so important. It makes such a difference and it fills your cup in a way that I think, again, you didn't even really know you needed it, but you come out stronger on the other side with every relationship you build.
Yep, absolutely. And I think the other advice that you gave, which is don't wait for, to check all the boxes. I think most women find themselves guilty of that. I'm also on the same page. I remember one time my husband said that to me. He was like, you almost want to be the director before you get the director title, right? Like, why? Why does it matter to you so much? And a lot of times I'm shooting my own self saying, oh, no, I'm not ready for this. And this is something.
Right.
And he's like, no, hell no, you are. Like, I think even having like a supporting, family who's sort of being your cheerleader, I think that's one of the rarest superpowers. So one advice that I will also give is choose a partner who's your cheerleader.
My gosh, 1,000%. You're so right. You are so right. Yes.
Yep. So tell me this, Jen, like, if you could challenge every retail executive listening to rethink one thing, what would that be?
Um, it's a really, really strong question. I think what I would say is I would challenge leaders to stop equating activity with more progress. I think in this moment where there is so much noise and so much coming at them, simplification is a competitive advantage and focus creates speed. So clarity reduces burnout. Organizations that are creating momentum right now are not necessarily doing more. They're getting clarity and focus on what they do really, really well. And you can see that, when you see retailers speaking out about it, focus is becoming one of the greatest competitive advantages of retail. So I think it's, internal alignment and adoption, obviously, but really, focus on speed, which comes from, a tunnel vision of, what is the future? What are we all aligned on? What is our North Star?
Yeah. Yeah. Busy work versus outcome driven work, right? Like that's
right.
It's such a struggle. And I think, almost every person who's growing up the ladder goes through it, right? Where you're trying to figure out, and then when you're at leadership level, it becomes even more important because every minute that you spend has to deliver the right outcome. It has to give the right clarity, right? And you're also leading by example with the way people are seeing you, right? If you're surrounding yourself with too much noise, you will see your team doing the same. You will see it's a ripple effect. So 100% agreed with that, Jen. Jen, with that, tell me a little bit about your current role in the retail industry. Where's your head at? You've had a sparkling career in, the last couple of decades. What are you up to, and what's top of mind for you?
Yeah. So just to give you some background, I am president and co-founder of Women in Retail. Just so everyone knows, Women in Retail is an association in the space for executive level women at all the major leading retailers and brands and vendor partners. We support the retail ecosystem. Our mission is really to champion women and, help them become the best leaders they can be with training and development, no matter what level you are within the organization, and support them with a community and a network to connect with along the way, which, as we've talked about, is so important. For us, really, we're focused on all of our second half events. We have Women in Retail on the Road events coming up. We'll be in various cities across the country. Our organization has events happening literally weekly, monthly. And so what I would say is get out and network and, use your community, whether it's ours, whether it's elsewhere, but use your community to understand and grow and scale. And we can all grow and learn together in this next half of the year.
Awesome. And Jen, where do we send people who are interested in talking to you?
Yeah. So you can find us at womeninretail.com and mytotalretail.com.
Awesome. Loved the chat, Jen. It was great talking to you, listening to your perspective. I think you're doing some really good work for the women leadership, for the women community in the retail space. Thank you for doing that. And I'd love to continue our chat. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. What a pleasure. Always great to be with you.